Mvelo, thank you for doing the interview. I'm
Thank you for
really happy
having me.
that you're
Yeah,
here
yeah.
doing this. I just want to start out by asking you, like, what influenced you to be entrepreneurial? Like, what events happened in your life
Yeah.
that caused you to be entrepreneurial?
I don't think I'd be able to pinpoint a specific moment. I guess just naturally, I've always seen myself as one that's been driven to solve problems. Well, not problems, but like challenges, or I'd rather like how I see them as opportunities.
Whoa, wait a minute. What, you see problems as opportunities, is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from? I mean, that's the entrepreneurial mindset right there, right?
Yeah. So I wouldn't pinpoint a specific point in time. I guess it's really just how I view things, really, in general, in terms of how people see challenges or obstacles in the way. I'd view them more of opportunities, if anything. And with that, that basically means to me, how would I look at the same situation and either help them get over it or help them get through it, or how I could also just make it easier for myself and for the next person, I guess. And for me, problem solving, that's where it comes from that point of view. It's not really a thing of you doing it just for the sake of doing it, but rather just how is it going to help the next person, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said a lot right there. I want to try to unpack it a little
Yeah.
bit. You said that you see problems as opportunities.
Yeah.
And you also said that you see it as like a challenge, like to help people, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just to get yourself, to solve a problem for yourself, but
Yeah.
you're sort of thinking about how can I make myself useful to other people, right?
Yeah, I mean, in essence, that's exactly it. Like, you don't want to be solving a problem that no one experiences, or a problem where, I guess, it's only helping you at the end of the day. I think it's quite important to solve something that not only affects you, but the next person. Yeah.
So where did that come from, though? I mean, did your parents kind of instill that in you? Did your parents like encourage you to solve problems?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily to solve problems per se. My parents have, I guess, fostered into, they've sort of fostered curiosity within me. So
How did they do that?
So both my parents are educators, right?
Ah.
So they've always wanted me to sort of learn more, to not necessarily read more, but to pick up from people that I interact with. And the more you actually speak to people, I like talking to people, and just to get an understanding of where they come from, what their interests are. And more often than not, the more comfortable they are with you, they'll start to like open up about some of the things that they face, in terms of their challenges. And then it's really, for me, that's very interesting. It's like, okay, cool, how do we, move past it, if anything, Besides that, I guess they've also just really pushed me to push myself as well as an individual, and not be limited by whatever situation that I'm in or environment, etc. Yeah, I mean, they themselves were dreamers. I guess in the time in which they grew up, they didn't really have access to the same opportunities as everyone else in South Africa, but they've always sat me down like, hey, I really wanted to do this. I really wanted to try do that. And I think for me, it showed that they had visions themselves, and I really wanted a vision for myself that I could stick to. Even at like when I'm old, have children or whatever, I'd still be able to say, okay, this is what I really wanted to do. I'm not really sure why they actually sat me down and to speak to me about those things, but I held on to the fact that they had visions for themselves, and I would definitely want to have a vision for myself.
Well, here's what's interesting about that, Mvelo, is, so many of the entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, they talk about having some kind of a vision.
Yeah.
I keep hearing that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because, I think if you want to explain entrepreneurial behavior, that's where you find it. When you're striving to make something happen,
yeah,
and something happen that doesn't just benefit you, but it benefits other people, right? That's sort of the key factor. And I think your parents did you an enormous favor by, instilling in you the importance of having a vision, something to strive for.
Yeah. I think definitely it should be the North Star to your life. Having that purpose that even just motivates you to get up in the morning, motivates you to actually do your bed and start your day. I think if anything, a vision is really important for you to at least see yourself going somewhere and guide you towards that path.
You got to be reaching for something, and I think
the whole time, the whole time.
You got the whole time, right?
Yeah.
You always got to be reaching. It's so interesting to me because I think you see it throughout nature.
Yeah.
The growth comes from the struggle, from the challenge.
Like a tree will reach towards the sun,
Correct.
Yeah.
Right? And I think it's so easy to overlook that. And I'm forever saying that if you want to understand the entrepreneur, stop looking at the individual's dispositional traits, their personality or whatever, and look more at the nature of the goal they're pursuing. Like, do they have a goal, and what's their relationship to that goal?
That's very true.
Right? And that's how you explain the behavior. It's not there's no mystery to it. It's really tied into that. And you and I were talking the other night at dinner about some similar things. I've interviewed lots of entrepreneurs, and I keep hearing the vision. And then you think of non-entrepreneurs, like, what is their vision? It's more like retirement or just
comfort.
Just comfort.
Yeah.
Right? When the vision is comfort.
Yeah. I don't think it's as tangible,
But that's interesting. You said something. I want to dig into that a little.
Okay.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's like when you're seeking comfort, you're going in the wrong direction. It's like everybody thinks I want to be on the beach and I want to be retired and, rich. No, you don't. Right?
Yeah.
You want to be striving for something.
I mean, even just the entrepreneurial journey itself, it doesn't afford that much comfort while you're on it.
It doesn't, right? You're always being challenged.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't trade it for anything.
No, not at all.
Right?
Couldn't imagine.
That's really, really interesting. That just, that little nugget just came from this conversation. That the difference is if you're striving for a compelling goal, you're striving for your own comfort. And I think that sort of, if you let's go up to 50,000 feet for a minute. The tension exists in all humans. There's tension between our need for certainty and comfort, because we need that as well. But it's at odds with our needs for vitality and growth, right? And so those things are kind of pulling in a different direction. And I think that helps to explain the entrepreneurial behavior. So your mom and dad kind of instilled in you, not even directly saying to you, I had a vision, and maybe I only got to 3/4 of my vision. I didn't get all the way.
Yeah.
But what they're communicating to you is strive towards some kind of greatness, towards something, push yourself.
Yeah.
So how did that come to manifest itself?
So just growing up generally, I think in my schooling environment, my teachers would also kind of help me towards that. So academically I was pretty sound. And they would sort of put more attention on certain students, which I was totally against. So I guess they would sort of be supportive of that as well. I think with that, I started, hanging around students that were not as academically gifted. And for me, I would get a whole lot more insights rather than hanging out with students that, were the top of the grade or whatever.
But you were at the top of your grade?
So for a few years, I would fluctuate between first, second, and third.
But you deliberately chose to hang around the students. That's awesome. Well, tell me more about that.
I guess you get a different perspective. Even the children that will always be in trouble, you sit down, why, I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes it was just out of them trying to find something that was fun. But what I found was that they were more creative. They were actually more curious. They were more the ones that would try bend the rules or rather push the limits. And in hanging around them, I kind of picked that up from them. I wouldn't necessarily go and try break the rules myself, but I'd pick up that behavior from them, which for me was also quite fun. It was quite liberating as well.
That's fascinating. But what's really interesting, what you said, Mvelo, is that you notice that the good, high-performing students weren't as creative, right? They weren't, they were better at I mean, I'm not, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but the high-performing students tend to become really good rule followers.
Yeah.
And the lack of academic achievement.
So they try to find patterns really to move them along the way. I think the ones that weren't as high performing would really struggle to a point where they had to become creative themselves in how to actually get through the system of schooling, at least, or anything really that they were struggling with.
I think you just described the entrepreneur. I mean, it's, there's a joke that says, the A students wind up becoming teachers who teach the B students how to work for the C students, right? Because they become more creative and they kind of, because of their lower academic abilities, they learn to become creative and kind of find other solutions, other workarounds.
Yeah.
So you deliberately start hanging out with kids that are less performing because you're intrigued by their curiosity and their creativity.
Yeah, creativity and curiosity, and just how they go around solving a challenge. I remember my friends actually, we still have a WhatsApp group from high school, and we're always just sending memes or updating each other about our lives. And every now and then it takes me back because we were also rugby players together as well, some of us in the group. And they would usually be focused on that, okay, cool, trying to, make it, I guess, on the sports field. And I was lucky enough to be able to play well and keep up with my academics as well. But yeah, so I think also just in that whole thing, trying to stay, with the same interests as my friends. So the whole balance thing kind of came to me as well.
Yep.
And I guess over time, in terms of workload and all that for me, it was quite manageable as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have any takeaways, any specific takeaways that you learned from your friends that were less academically astute?
Don't let it stress you too much, if it's not something that's so material to what you want for yourself. Like I said, they had different visions. As much as they had to go to school, their vision was something totally separate. And I think if it's not that material to your life, don't let it stress you too much. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I picked up from that.
Yeah. So what are your parents saying when you're hanging around the C students?
Yeah. My parents weren't particularly against it. So like I said, they were educators themselves, so they would see the entire spectrum in a class. So I think from their perspective, they could see that, I guess, it was possible. Every now and then they would ask, hey, are you actually studying, and just generally though, they were pretty okay with it. It wasn't too much of a stress for them.
So what is your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
Back in high school, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with Milo. So it's like a hot chocolate basically. And they used to sell it at the local store. I used to get a tub that was small. And I have 4 siblings. So every time they'd want Milo for themselves, I'd usually just sell them for a scoop each or something. So I think that's the first business I can remember having. So I just sell it to my siblings every now and then. But my first real business, I guess, was in my first year of study. It was a learning, it was a hardware device. So we were trying to get schools in more disadvantaged areas access to learning material. So what it used was thermal printing, which means it cut out the cost of ink. So essentially they would get, after they have the device itself, they would get the content material for free if they accessed it from a cloud or a database. Yeah.
How did you come up with that idea?
We were part of a program at UCT itself. It was called UCT Upstarts. So they kind of put us in random teams and to solve a problem. So there was a problem statement that they gave to us, and then we solved the problem, and that's the idea we sort of landed with. The project lasted for just under a year. I think there was no cohesion amongst the founders because we didn't really know each other. And we're all at different stages in our lives. One of them was actually doing his master's. He was about to get married. I was in my first year of study, so you could imagine, yeah.
Yeah. But it was sort of like an exercise, really.
Yeah, it was an exercise. I think the business itself could have had legs had the team behind it really been on the same wavelength around it.
Yeah. So some of them were just looking at it as an exercise, but there was potential there, but people, the team wasn't necessarily interested in anything more than an exercise.
Yeah.
Did that, like, so how did that impact you, like that early experience?
So I was able to make a lot of mistakes during that. So just how to approach even a client, or how to even think about, marketing or packaging your solution, and even how you sell it. So there was a lot of practice for me in doing that. And now, as I've moved on to other sort of projects along the way, I was able to refine that until now, which is a business I'm running. Yeah.
So were there other businesses between that and the business you're running now?
Yeah. So there was, one of them was a security tech. So that one is actually still going. So it's like a panic button connected to your phone. I'm not as hands-on anymore, but it's still something that's there. One is with a candidate fellow as well. We started a financing platform where it was centered around stock files. So stock files, which is basically a group of people that come together to pool money together, and they usually disperse it, monthly. So it's very common here in South Africa. So the idea was to use that money to finance, people, startups and projects, etc. So I since left that team because I was focused on that first idea that I spoke to you about. So focus is very important. I didn't want to be meddling into two different things. And yeah, so I left that team. It's actually still a going concern, which is pretty well. So my friend actually, he's championing that. It's doing pretty well, yeah.
So you start one business, you're not actually hands-on running it, but it's still going. So you kind of saw that you're able to bring an idea to life.
Yeah.
Right? You kind of had that efficacy moment, right? Yeah. So what is the business you're doing now?
So the business is called Zaio. We teach people how to code. So there's a learning journey that we have on the platform. It's broken down into 4 levels. On the first level, they learn actual material through video content. Second level, they kind of test the skills that they've picked up. So we have what we call coding challenges. And then on third level, they build a feature based on the coding language that they learned in the first 2 stages. And then say like a chat feature or a geolocation feature. So a small component of an actual application. And then on the 4th level, which is really the part we're very excited about, is the marketplace that's formed. So after they've gone through the first 3 levels, they form teams of between 3 or 4, and we connect them to startups and entrepreneurs that are looking for mobile apps, web applications to be built. So the students get practical experience, while an entrepreneur will get, a solution at a very affordable cost, which they can take to market and test out.
Yeah. That's really an interesting idea. I mean, you heard me say this the other night. It's one skill I wish I would have learned. It's never too late, but
programming, yeah.
But ability to program, and I think that's so. Yeah, I mean, a kid can access that without being at university.
Yes, definitely.
Right. So you can empower people that can't afford to go to university.
Yeah. So an example of that. So we had someone come onto the platform. So he was working as a security guard. And they were able to go through the entire journey, and now effectively they're a software developer. So he's actually working on a project for us right now. Yeah.
Wow, that's a great story. And how old are you now?
I'm 21.
You're 20. Right. So are you doing this full time? Are you still in school?
I'm doing my final year at university.
Okay. How is that, juggling those 2 things back and forth?
It's quite interesting. I guess I don't sleep as much as I would definitely like. So I need to always watch my health. Even last night, I was working till about 4 on campus, and I had to wake up at 8 for class. So it's not the most healthy, I guess, situation right now. But I guess, like I said, it's that vision that drives you, or that sense of purpose that helps you, just push on, into the odd hours of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I remember I interviewed this kid in Kansas City, and he developed this business that he was modifying game consoles for professional gamers. He would paint them, he would modify them, like, ergonomically for the user.
Yeah.
And he had generated $100,000 in 1 year, while he was in college.
That's great, yeah.
And he was spray painting these things, in his mother's basement and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I asked him how this experience has changed his life, changed his perception of the world and himself and so on and so forth. And his answer was, he kind of looked off and he said, well, my girlfriend's not happy, right? So you don't really have a social life.
Is that a question to me?
Yeah, I'm just kind of like, how has that impacted your...
On the contrary, actually.
Yeah.
So last year I was actually seeing someone. We stopped seeing each other for reasons not related to business pressures. But that I have plenty of time for her. Also, like, I have plenty of time for my friends. I think it was something that it is something I don't compromise on, my social life. Like, I love interacting with people. So even if I haven't been around people for a long enough time, I start feeling off and I actually become less productive.
Yeah.
So if a friend is having like a birthday party, I will definitely be there. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, do you use mentors? Do you have people that like sort of help and guide you?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I think it really is the only way. Okay, not the only way, but like it's the most effective way.
It's like an accelerant.
Yeah, it is definitely. You learn from their mistakes. They give you guidance. They say, okay, this is what has worked for me. You could try it yourself. I think they unlock knowledge and wisdom that you would have to go through yourself first, which they already have done, and then you just walk through the same steps.
Yeah. So it's curious to me why more people don't reach out to mentors. If something is free and available to anyone.
Yeah. I guess it could be fear as well.
Yeah.
One of the most ridiculous reasons that I ever heard was somebody was scared that the mentor would take the idea. That for me it was troubling, like, to hear. Like, I think you need to have a certain degree of trust as well, just as an entrepreneur, that when evangelizing about your business, you're doing exactly that, trying to get the word out. And a mentor, it doesn't have that's the predisposition, the sort of view that they want to take an idea, but rather to help. So if you're not able to trust somebody that comes to you to give you help, I think there's already an issue there.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier, Mvelo, that you sort of like look at problems as opportunities. That was a pretty clear statement you made at the beginning. So can you tell me what's the problem you're trying to solve with your current business, and how did you encounter it? Like, how did you come across it?
Okay. So if I had to define it now, it would be there's just not enough talent. So take talent in Africa that is there to actually create innovation. So we're lagging behind as opposed to the rest of the world. So where you're from, the States, you guys have unicorns, they call them, even though if they're not profitable mostly, but you guys are seen as, the center of innovation globally. So even when you think about where tech is built right now, people usually outsource it to India. So what we really want as ourselves is to cultivate those young leaders that will actually drive the future of African tech innovation. So we want to create the pool of talent here in South Africa and people in Africa, and people will look at Africa as the place where they will source affordable talent that will actually build out their solutions.
So I have another question now. but I'll hold that question. I want to ask the first part of the question is
Yeah.
like, how did you come across that? I mean, were you trying to scratch your own itch?
Oh no, definitely. So I actually needed an app built, and I couldn't afford one. So I asked a friend of mine who was a student he's still a student, and he had he had an issue on the other end where he had applied at Intel, the South African office, and they saw his marks. He was Dean's List, Golden Key, which is like those societies where you're doing really, really well. And they asked him what had he actually built. So was there an app he had built, and he didn't have anything to show outside like really good marks. So they didn't take him. So it was solving their need, his need, by saying, okay, cool, can build something for you it will go in your profile, which you can showcase, and then for me, I would get an app. But actually ended up not building that app, and we're like, hey, there's actually a business here, and we started growing that. The two of us, and then our team started growing after that.
So it might seem a little unusual for a 21-year-old kid to say, I want to solve a problem for Africa.
Yeah.
Right? I mean that's to a lot of people that might seem like an extraordinary a statement, but I think it's an important statement, and I think I can see the evolution of your belief from selling like hot chocolate, right?
Yeah.
And some of these little failed experiments, but you started to get traction, and you realized that if your idea is useful, it can benefit people, it's possible to spread the idea. You're not stuck in a company where someone's telling you, you can only do this and you can only do it, in this confined context. I think that's just an important piece. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but it's kind of cool.
I mean, I think just as an entrepreneur, and as you move through your journey, it is iterative, as you say. So you build, and based on the knowledge that you just picked up there, whether it failed or you succeeded, you keep building.
It's cumulative.
It's very much so, yeah.
Right? I met Richard Branson a couple of years ago when he was telling a story about how he started Virgin Airlines, right? And he was trying to fly back to his island, and the flight was canceled, on a commercial airline, the flight was canceled with no explanation.
Yeah.
And he went out to the hangar and got some guy with a private jet, and everybody pooled their money and they paid the guy, and he got home.
Yeah.
Right? He's got the problem-solving skills. But the next day he woke up and said, he called Boeing and asked them if he could buy a used 747.
Yeah.
Right? And it's interesting, like what people don't recognize is like the self-efficacy that had to happen in iterative until you get to the point that the years of little wins that bring a human to the point where you say to yourself, I had an unpleasant flight, I think I'll start my own airlines, right?
Yeah.
And you've sort of demonstrated that as well. Like, I can't find someone to write code for this project. Oh, maybe we could create an app that would help people learn how to develop code, and they could, change the economy, make an economic impact in Africa. That's what your compelling vision is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you say, it's really just those steps that Richard Branson himself took. It wasn't. He would have never just woken up one day and said, "Hey, let me start an airline." It had to affect him somehow. It had to affect other people around him as well. It's like, okay, there's actually something here. And I'm pretty sure when you dive deeper into his story, you'll see that he, like you say, is a problem solver. And he started a very small problem, and then the next problem, which got bigger and bigger and bigger. And until you gain the confidence enough to actually say, I can start an airline.
You have just a larger sense of efficacy, but I want the people watching this interview, Mvelo, to understand that, to not just look at you and think, that you're some sort of a prodigy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to deconstruct like how you got to that point, right? You have these little experiments you've been doing, and you start to think bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
So who are you surrounding yourself with now? Are you still surrounding yourself with the misfits and the underdogs?
Not as much anymore. I still do make time for them though. I think every now and then it's quite refreshing to just get different people's perspective. But mostly now I spend a lot of time with my team. We actually live together, so that everyone that works in the business. I spend a lot of time with older people now as well. So I'm trying to extract as much knowledge as I can from them. People that have walked the journey. And yeah, that's pretty much where I spend most of my time now.
What have you learned about yourself in your entrepreneurial journey? I mean, what do you think? Do you got something that comes to mind that you could say you learned about yourself?
I think I'm able to be comfortable in uncertainty, if anything. So an unfamiliar situation for me, when I was young, I would have definitely shied away from. I think now it's more of a challenge that I really do embrace. So I'd rather go head on. So there's a saying that I actually sort of live by. You're always one decision away from changing your life. So the idea behind that is that one decision or one snap judgment that you make, you could totally go into a different course of your life. So in making decisions, I try and be very decisive with the decisions I make and follow through with them. And the bigger decision, it would really scare me in the beginning, but now it's like, okay, this is exciting.
Yeah. You said something kind of profound there. I would say, Mvelo, that your willingness to tolerate uncertainty is a big thing.
Yeah.
And I'm forever telling my adult children that are 26 and 28 that tolerating ambiguity is a superpower. And I think that's sort of one of the hidden things of the entrepreneurial among us, is that willingness to tolerate that. Like we're hardwired not to.
Yeah, to try to stay away from it as much as we can.
Yeah, we try to escape this because it's uncomfortable, right? It's kind of like a cold shower. It's going to kill you.
Yeah.
But it's sort of uncomfortable. But I think that's where the opportunities can be found.
Definitely.
Right? We don't want to walk down a path where there's no one else on that path. Right? That's ambiguity. That's uncertainty.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting to me the extent to which we'll leave opportunity on the table.
For comfort.
For comfort.
Yeah.
Because we won't pursue a path without the assurance of the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a nugget I want to just draw out of this conversation, that learning how to tolerate ambiguity or uncertainty, whatever you want to call it, there's a difference technically, but it's not worth getting into. That's an important piece of the puzzle that the average person wouldn't recognize as
important,
as a point to learn from. So when you're hanging around your high school friends that maybe didn't do as well as you, are you trying to do you ever try to help them or share your own experience with them in a way to help them, and are they receptive to it?
Yeah, so we were always speaking about, every time I go home, because they don't live where I stay now, it's always like, okay, so what is everyone doing? What is your vision? Like, it's probably one of the first questions I ask. So what are you doing, and why are you doing that? Is there something that you're building towards? And we kind of unpack that first, and then I'll offer myself like, okay, what do you need help with? Can I help in this realm or that realm?
Yeah.
So that's always a conversation that is sparked, I think, as soon as I get home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do
you have any takers? I mean, are responsive to that? Or?
About one or two of my friends, but what I've also found is that they get really excited there and then once, a couple of days later, it's like, okay, no, this is actually too much. Or maybe this is not something that I really want to do, So, and it's being comfortable with that as well. Like, okay, you can't really force someone to have a vision for themselves.
Right. But it's interesting to me that most people are not aware of the extent to which our environment and the situation influence our behavior. Mm. So you're sort of this temporary influence in the environment.
Yeah.
But you leave that environment and it sort of goes back to the way it was, right? Yeah. And I just think that's an important point. People don't realize how habits just sort of take over.
Yeah.
And do you see like opportunities? I mean, do you see other opportunities? I mean, do you think they're rare gems, or do you think they're everywhere? How do you think about that?
Opportunities are everywhere. I think if you just scan this room now, you would definitely find like 100 opportunities.
How do you explain that to somebody? I mean, somebody would say, like, look at the employment numbers in South Africa and say, there's no opportunity there, right?
Yeah.
And then you hear the entrepreneur and they say there's just unlimited opportunity. Like, how do you reconcile that? I
think it definitely is mindset. So what sort of perspective or what lens rather you're looking at the world through. I think when people are focused on the issue or the challenge rather than actually seeing it as an opportunity, if anything, already you're coming from a position of this can't be solved. This is just going to remain an issue for me until somebody else comes and does it.
Right.
And then when you look at things as an opportunity, it's like, oh, okay, can I actually use the time and energy that I have now to do something about this? I think the only limiting factors or your constraints would rather be your time, your energy, maybe your financial, your resources at the end of the day. And for me, it's really like you asked if I see opportunities all the time. Yeah, definitely. And it's for right now, it's a matter of trying to stay focused on the opportunity, on what I'm working on now, rather than being taken by everything that's around me.
Yeah, I heard it in a podcast I listened to a couple of days ago. Someone was asked about like the successful characteristics, and one of the guys, what he said was this sort of combination of like lots of ideas, but the ability to triage.
Yeah.
The ability to just kind of kill, let some of them die. And he was saying like Beethoven may not have been a better composer than others, but he was very prolific.
Yeah.
And so he just had, more hits.
He composed lots.
Right.
It's looking at the opportunities, I guess, from a place of abundance. Like there are so many, they'll always come to you. Like you don't need to take every single one that comes your way.
Right.
Like you are able to say, okay, no, not this one, I'll pass. Let me just focus on this. Next will come.
Yeah. Richard Branson also said, opportunities are like trains. Like if you miss this one, there'll be another one along in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it, right?
It's a great analogy.
But it's interesting to me again, so I think most of us have been trained to think like employees.
It's the schooling system right now.
It's the school system, it's societal, it's sort of the industrial era, the zeitgeist. Is this underlying assumption that we're going to train you to be an employee. And it's never really said to you that way, but it's implied.
Yeah.
It's implied that you're going to work in an established organization where the useful thing has already been determined.
Yeah.
By someone more powerful than you, smarter than you, more creative than you, older than you, whatever. And you're expected to do what you're told and fulfill some predetermined, well-defined role in that organization.
Yeah.
And I think the difference is the entrepreneurial-minded person is assuming it's up to me to figure out what is useful.
Yeah.
And so if you look at South Africa through the lens of an employee, there's no opportunity.
Yeah.
But if you look at it through the lens of the entrepreneur who says, well, how can I make myself useful?
There's a lot of opportunities.
It's just like, it's sort of like the Matrix. It's the red pill or the blue pill, yeah. Right? It's just a different lens, and once you're able to see it, it's quite extraordinary. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Mvelo, is money, right? A lot of people think that you need money to start a business.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you what you think about that, and I
really shook my head. You don't. Maybe money to register your company, I think it's like 100 and something rand here. But there's this thing like, okay, I have an idea, let me wait for funding so I can start it. I think you're selling yourself short, if anything. There's a concept of an MVP, or a minimal viable product, where you literally take your idea to its simplest form, still having at least 1 or 2 features that resemble your idea and testing those out. And more often than not, it doesn't require you to have money for that. I think you can always leverage off other resources that are there to sort of move into that direction.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, a lot of people would say, well, I would love to own my own business, but I don't have any money.
Yeah.
And I think the underlying implications of that is I'm only thinking about myself. I want to own a business because I want to have a better life for me.
Yeah.
And that's sort of blinders, right? Because you should be thinking about what problems can I solve. If you're thinking about what problems can I solve, you don't need money.
Yeah, money wouldn't limit you.
Money won't limit you. I
Yeah.
mean, I think there's a case to be made that once you've proven that you have an opportunity that's scalable, then money can help you scale. But really, and at that point, once you've proven it, it's a lot easier to find the money.
That's very true.
Right?
Even like with our business, first year of it, so we were literally using our own skills. So developers in the team would code, and then we'd just go around sell the whole time. It was only when we were able to raise our angel round that we started, scaling out.
Yeah.
And for a whole year, though, it was just using our own skills. And then I guess every now and then, if you really need to buy something, it will be from your pocket money.
Yeah. But you also have to learn to make kind of sacrifices, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. And, I've observed in the entrepreneurs is even when they become very successful, they tend to be very frugal, right? Because you learn to make a dollar go a long way, or a rand or whatever. You learn to make it go a long way in the early days, right?
Yeah.
But I think I just want to return to the idea that a lot of people think, I want to have this life, but I don't have the money. And I would say, like, you don't have the money because you don't know how to create value. And if you can figure out how to create value, the money will come.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of like that. So let me just sort of wrap up and ask you, like, what's your compelling vision now? Like, what do you see, like, off in the future? Where are you 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
I did touch on this earlier. So my vision is Africa. So it's really just changing the narrative about how it's viewed, especially from the lens of the West itself. I think China has taken a lot of interest in Africa itself because they are seeing the abundance of opportunity within Africa itself. It even informed one of my decisions, because initially when I entered university, I was doing finance and accounting. I switched, now I'm doing politics, philosophy, and economics, which is more broad. And the reason behind that is for me to go into policy setting myself. But it's really just, as a continent, we need guidance to sort of find, or rather to see, to be enlightened with regards to the opportunities that are there. So myself personally, my personal vision is to help others to see that. And in the next 5 years, I see myself being at least in a position where there's a lot of credibility for me to actually be able to help people to do that. But from the business perspective itself, it's scale, I guess. Multiple countries, allowing people to make that shift from maybe even a domestic worker to a software developer at no cost to them. In places like Nairobi, where tech is being adopted very quickly, Nigeria, parts of Ghana. So that's our vision, our 5-year vision as a business ourselves.
Like, what would be your message to other young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, it's believe in the idea and start. Don't spend too much time really just trying to see where it could go wrong. Go there with a sense of ignorance and see where it actually goes. If it fails, you learn something. If it takes off, well, I guess you're in the money, I guess. So yeah.
After interviewing hundreds of entrepreneurs, what I would say is it's really quite simple. You got to be looking for problems to solve, and you've touched on that.
Yeah.
And you got to be trying things.
Yeah.
That's the formula.
All the time.
You got to be trying things.
You can't just speak it, you need to do it. Yeah.
Because you don't know unless you try. And very often what you try doesn't work, but you discover something else in the process, right? But if you're only trying to solve a problem for yourself, you're going to miss the opportunity, right? It's fabulous.
Thank you.
Mvelo, thank you for doing this interview. I very much enjoyed this.